exploring unknown regions of our reality.
And she looks out and sees these lights in the sky and these different patterns drifting like they were going to land.
Examining the depths of human perception.
I remember when I was awake and I realized I was awake, I started to sort of scan the room and I realized that something was wrong.
Pursuing the elusive and unseen.
Electronics started acting up, ceased to work, overheated.
You have just entered a road of wondrous mystery.
It was now standing, and I got a whole image of just how gargantuan this thing was.
A place where sometimes our darkest terrors dwell.
I've never seen anything like this, and instantly I could feel the fear.
You've just turned onto the Paranormal Road.
Tonight, the Paranormal Road travels to the Smoky Mountain state of Tennessee, where you'll meet Matt and Adam, the creators of the hit paranormal podcast show, Graveyard Tales. I'm David.
And I'm Randy.
We have a great show for you folks. I've been looking forward to this all week. Graveyard Tales is my favorite paranormal podcast show. Matt and Adam, they are just funny as can be. They have great personalities. They gel together, and their subject matter is really good.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to meet them down in Tennessee, and they were just incredible people to work with.
We went there they did actually a live podcast event, which was really cool. They did that in joint conjunction with Hillbilly Horror Stories. And we also got to meet Jerry and Tracy Pauly. Again, a wonderful couple.
They were a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was just a great time. And they have a huge following, both of them, those two podcast shows. And it really doesn't surprise me because they're that good.
Just listening to them, everything flows. I only hope that our podcast can become what theirs is.
Hope and pray. Please understand that we are a new podcast. Some of you may have noticed as you're following our episodes that we've had some variances in our audio quality, especially when it comes in regards to call-in interviews. Rest assured, we're aware of these, and we are working on addressing them. In fact, I've ordered a whole lot of new equipment that should be coming in over the next 2 weeks.
And hopefully Dave will learn how to use it all.
Thanks, Randy. He's right. It is pretty complicated when you're a novice like we are and trying to learn and understand how to prevent feedback and the hiss in the mic. So bear with us, folks. We will be addressing these issues as time goes on. We do have some really exciting news, though. We have a new producer or a production schedule director named Lewis, and he will be handling and taking care of all of our future shows. So if you are an author of a book and would like to get the word out about your book on something on paranormal subject matter, or even maybe a psychic medium book,
anything different, anything paranormal, anything that people have been reluctant to talk about in their lives, contact us. It might be something interesting, and it might help you to get it off your shoulder.
And you can expect a call from Lewis to follow through to see when we can fit you in on the show. And speaking of the show, the whole purpose of Paranormal Road, we wanted to create a show where people would feel free to listen to paranormal subject matter and to be able to relate to maybe something that happened in their lives. As you may recall, or if you've listened to all of our shows so far, we chose the Hat Man to be our very first podcast because that was very personal to me. This entity not only plagued me, but 20 plus years later, it comes down to I find out that my children also suffered from a visit of this entity. So I know what it's like to have paranormal experiences and not be able to tell somebody. And the sad part is people you think are your best friends or even co-workers, and unfortunately a few family members, can be the most brutal and degrading when you share your stories.
And a lot of people have experienced things throughout their life that are unexplained, whether it be UFO or Bigfoot or, just anything unexplainable. Let us know about it. We'll research it. We'll try to come up with answers. And if we can't, talk about it anyway. Call in. Let's talk about it.
That's what the show's all about, folks. And we will be evolving, and we have some features that will be planned for the show down the road. One of which we're actually going to premiere tonight. We had a show, UFO investigator of Ohio, William Haddox. He did a great job explaining how he investigates reports of UFOs. We've talked to him afterwards, and he has signed on with Paranormal Road to be our special investigative reporter over UFO subject matter. And we're calling it the Haddox Report. So once a month, maybe more if there's news that just comes in breaking.
Anything that he hears about or gets reported to him or asked about through him, he's gonna report on it.
And that's not just Ohio, that's worldwide. So if you've even had a sighting and you're in England and you're listening to this, feel free to reach out to William. He has tools that he can research what was in the sky at that time. He really diligent and very non-biased, but very sincere. So we're excited to have him join our team.
There's another feature that we want to add to Paranormal Road, and that is our listeners. Our listeners, we really want you to call in or tell us your stories. If you're not comfortable with calling in and you don't want to be on the radio, then email us. Let us know the story. Tell us what's happening, and we will respond. We're not going to judge you or think different about what's happening with you. In fact, we want to share that with people and put it on the air so that if people out there have experienced the same sort of thing, then we can move forward, research it, see what's going on, and if nothing else, it just helps to get it off your shoulders.
Plus, you don't know if by you telling your story, you may be helping someone else who is suffering from PTSD of the paranormal. Someone who may have seen a UFO that you have seen almost in exact detail. Or perhaps you're having a haunting and the similarities of your stories matches theirs, so therefore it makes them help cope with their situation more. That's what Paranormal Road is all about. It's about helping people and being able to, again, bring up your stories without fear of ridicule or judgment.
And on top of that, I mean, think about it. The paranormal might not be so abnormal. What's happening out there might not be happening to just you, but other people. So sharing that knowledge is actually going to bring about information in the future.
And the best way to get your stories to us is simply go to Facebook and give us a message. Paranormal Road on Facebook. Shoot us a message. Or you can go to our EVP Medium site. You can click on or send an email to podcast@evpmediums.com. Again, that's podcast@evpmediums.com. Also, we need your support. If you like the show, please let Odyssey One radio station know that you like Paranormal Road. Your feedback is important to us. If you've missed a show on Odyssey Radio, you can listen to our podcast versions, which are posted a few days after airing live. Simply go to your podcast provider, iTunes, Podbean, and type in Paranormal Road. There you'll find our entire archive collection. It's really important, folks, that you give us a 5-star rating or a thumbs up rating and a review, no matter who your provider is. Doing so pushes us up higher in a search engine. This allows other people to find us, other like-minded people seeking answers in the paranormal. Help us help others by giving us a rating and review on iTunes or your favorite podcast provider.
Dave, I want to add to that by saying that our listeners are important. And, anything that you can suggest or bring up to us that will, make our listening better, contact us. Get a hold of us through our Facebook page for Paranormal Road and tell us what you think. We're always open to suggestions and anything that can make, our show better. Contact us. We're willing to listen, and we'll see what we can do about bringing up topics that you send us.
And I think it's time to move the show along and get into with tonight's subject matter. We're going to start off with our first Haddox report, and then it's on to Graveyard Tales.
Our trip down Paranormal Road to Tennessee.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Professional UFO investigator and special assignment reporter for Paranormal Road. It's the Haddox Report.
This is William Haddox with the Haddox Report, and I had a couple interesting cases that were recently called into the reporting center, which can be found at Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. First one is one I'm going to need some help from the listening audience. This was at approximately 11:30 p.m. on the 23rd of February, 2019, in the Greer-Spartanburg area of South Carolina. That's the northern part of South Carolina. It was a very loud explosion, reported to me as sort of a sonic boom. Shook windows, rattled, windows, woke up every dog in the area. Witness says it was nothing like thunder or any of the exploding targets that people like to shoot. It was nothing that. It was a lot louder, but it was extremely cloudy, so nobody could actually see anything. What made this extremely odd, once I'd done some digging online, was this was heard in at least 5 states at the same time. Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and Texas were all reported to have heard this at the same time. So my first thought was to get a hold of National Weather Service. That turned up nothing. Got a hold of NASA in Houston, which gave a very good idea. And this is where the listening audience can help out. If anybody lives in one of those states and has a security camera, if you could go back to the 23rd of February and check your camera and see if you picked up any audio. There was no object or anything to be seen that I'm aware of, but the audio could help out greatly to determine what the object may have been, the speed it was traveling, etc. And also, while I was doing some digging through Facebook and other social media areas, I noticed there was quite a few from various parts of the country, groups popping up to try to explain or at least catalog these unexplained explosions. They've been going on for quite some time. Recently, within the last couple months, there was one reported in northern Ohio, which people thought sounded like a natural gas explosion. And also I noticed there was a group in the southern part of the state around Cincinnati that had close to 700 members to their page that was reporting very similar instances. So if anybody has heard one of these explosions or has anything that they could add to this, I would greatly appreciate it if you could send it to the reporting center, which is Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. You can fill out a report or fill out the contact form on the homepage, and either way would be greatly appreciated. If you need to get in touch with me directly, there are a couple ways you can do it. One would be through my Facebook page, which is Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center, or you can go on Facebook and search for Paranormal Road, and they can get in contact with me directly, which may be a little faster. If it's something more urgent, I would advise both. That way you got a better chance of getting a quicker response. But I always give a response in 24 hours regardless, though. As long as I'm able to, receive the report, you will have a response. May not have an answer, but you will have a response within 24 hours. In many cases, a lot less. The second report that I want to go over is something I'm going to use as a bit of an example for anybody that may send any reports in to the reporting center in any time in the future. And this was from the 26th of February, 2019. Location of the event was Amanda, Ohio, which is not far from me, just down the road. The object that was reported was two bright reddish-orange lights, unable to determine the size, but very high altitude, almost star-like. They appeared to not be moving for approximately 10 seconds, and then both made a slight left before one and then the other disappeared. There's a couple key pieces that was left out of that report, and hopefully the witness will get back in touch with me shortly and I can get this one solved. Cases like this are normally not terribly difficult to figure out with some of the tools that I use. Problem being, I don't know a time or a location they were looking. Also, were they in a vehicle or stationary? Those three bits of evidence are most important, because I've seen many times things that match this description almost perfectly, but I can't pin it down to a certain aircraft or event if I don't have a little more information. So that's why when someone fills out a report, I really need as much information as possible, or when you leave your contact information, try to get in contact, as soon as possible so I can get the required information. I know when a person's filling out a report, it can be tricky to remember every little thing you need added in. I do ask some basic questions, but main thing being is a detailed description, which this one gave, and contact info. So once I contact you, I can get the required information that I need and put this one to rest. So if anybody, like I say, has anything to add to the reporting center, to the website, I'm always open for suggestions as well. You can either get in touch through my website if you've got any questions or concerns about the site itself, or if anything related to this broadcast, then you can get in touch with Paranormal Road through Facebook, and they can handle any questions or concerns you may have concerning the broadcast itself. That's pretty much what I've got for the time being. Hopefully everybody will stay tuned to future episodes. I'm going to do this at least once a month going forward with UFO information. Unless I get anything local, then I will bring that out in a timely manner in case anybody else has anything they can add to the report if you happen to be from the area where it was reported. So again, thanks to all the listeners out there and everybody who's downloaded the podcast. I appreciate it. Stay safe and keep looking up.
That's really odd that William would have in his report about those explosion booming sounds heard. Do you remember back in December when we were in the planning stages for Paranormal Road? We had a meeting scheduled at your house for Russ to call, and I heard that explosion. You heard it in the kitchen. You were in the kitchen at the time, and it was just, the whole house rattled. I mean, that's kind of weird.
It was really, really intense. I mean, the whole house shook to the point that we both ran to the windows looking out, expecting to see billowing smoke from an exploded home.
Yeah, and debris falling on the street. It was that loud, folks. And there was nothing. So we stood outside for a long time waiting to see if there was smoke that would maybe emanate from another block. Nothing.
Fire trucks, anything. We were expecting to see, all kinds of stuff.
and there was nothing. And then when the station manager did call for the meeting, and we were talking about the show, and then I brought up about the explosion, he said, yeah, I heard that as well. That was really loud. And I'm like, where do you live? And I was thinking he lived somewhere in Lorraine, and he said Huron. And that's, to me, that was mind-blowing, because that's 3 cities over, and he heard it at the exact same time as well. And what is bizarre is there was nothing on the news about it. You know, I expected there would be something on Facebook. I know other people obviously had to hear it, but I wonder if there's some kind of connection.
There's no way that it could have been just isolated to us, and it was too big. So with that being said, we have a break coming up, and when we return, we're going to have Matt and Adam from Graveyard Tales.
Don't let the negativity of today's world get you sidetracked from your life's journey. Visit It's Your Journey Metaphysical Store at 4750 Cleveland Road East in Huron, Ohio. It's Your Journey is more than a store. It's a place of healing and knowledge. It's Your Journey carries a wide variety of healing crystals and protection stones, salt lamps, books, incense, candles, essential oils, and more. It's Your Journey also offers Reiki, energy healing, personal readings, spirit releasement, and soul retrieval. Live out of the area? No problem. Visit It's Your Journey's website at itsyourjourney.com and shop online. Shipping available worldwide. Or call 419-433-0888. Don't let negative energy stop you. Take charge. It's your journey.
Promised is Matt and Adam from Graveyard Tales. Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going?
Guys. Hey, how are y'all?
Good. Hey, I have to ask you, who wrote your opening dialogue? I mean, how'd you come up with that, and where did you get the music? I mean, that's just like you hear that and you created a brand, like boom, right there.
Well, it's funny because a good buddy of ours named Brandon Adams that I've known for a while, he and I were talking, and I was kind of explaining the show to him and everything, because it was even before we got it started. And I said, here's what we are, here's what we do. And he came up with all of the music for it and did it all himself. He plays in a band called Proteus, which is a local band here in the Nashville area. And then just sitting down with that music, I don't know, I screwed around with it for a while and came up with something that didn't sound too terrible, and Matt and I went from there. So
yeah, I wrote my part.
Well, it works great for both of you.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, it's unmistakable. I mean, when I first started listening to you guys, when I first heard it, it was like, this is really neat. It's just like it catches you, and then of course, you know, that enthusiasm of, you know, how you do that, Adam, the Graveyard Tales. I could never even, even come close to.
Don't go back. Don't go back and listen to the first one.
Oh no! See that it evolved because it was all there, but then that energy, we record at night, and so it was like after working all day, the first few episodes, the energy was like, hey, everybody, so it took a lot more caffeine to get to where we are today.
Yeah.
We're starting to feel you with that. We know what you're talking about.
Right.
How on earth did you come up with this concept? And even let's go, I guess, a little bit back farther. What launched you, or what inspired you to even get into the podcasting business?
I was on a road trip, essentially. Amanda and I were driving to Memphis, and we were both big into podcasts. And so we were listening to different shows as we go along. And the show we were listening to, I just looked at her and said, man, I could do this. And she's like, you should. You absolutely should. And that was it for about maybe a month or so. And one night Adam's up at the house and we're just hanging out. And she comes in and says, did Matt tell you about talking about doing a podcast? And Adam just says, no, but we totally should. He said that would be awesome. And
in other words, we have Amanda to thank for the show.
Kinda. I mean, she's always been the one that I'll have an idea and I'll just sit on it. And she's the one that pushes and says, you got to do this. You can do it. Just go. And, she's a real, let's do it now and we'll sort out the mess later. So that's kind of how it started. And I mean, by the end of the night, sitting at our kitchen table, we had a name for a show. Mm-hmm. We had about a half a dozen show topics. And I mean, we were on it. And I mean, a week later, Adam's like, all right, I found these mics. We can order these microphones and we can be ready to go by October. And that's like, this is real. We're really going to do this, aren't we?
Yeah. And one of the things that we haven't ever talked about before, publicly, I don't think, is that right before that, the first part of that year, I had a big medical issue and in and out of hospitals and all this other junk. And it was, at that point that I was like, you know what? I need to do something that I'm going to enjoy and it's going to be fun and, I can learn something from and all that. Cause I was like, well, what am I doing? I'm going to work every day and then coming home. So after all that medical stuff, I was like, screw it. We got to get into something. And then pretty much Matt brought that up within a week of me thinking, Adam, you've got to do something. And so I latched on it kind of like a bulldog and didn't let go. Yeah. And here we are.
Is there anything that you guys want to share with us? You can share with our listeners about, how much time you spend? I mean, you guys do great research. You've got to spend tons of time on this, or, do you have people that help you with it? How do you do it?
Well, we've got one of our friends, Lucy, helps us with some research. We're always looking for anyone else who could possibly help us out that might have access to different information than we have, because, we can get a lot of information and pretty much we do that every night after work. Matt and I both come home and hit the Google or the books or whatever to research. And we do that every day of the week leading up to record day. And even some days on recording day, Matt and I are messaging back and forth going, oh man, I just found this. Now we got extra 45 minutes of show that we got to figure out what to do with, So there's a ton of our evening spent doing that. And I'm sure it gets annoying for Amanda and Ashley,
Yeah, well, sometimes, but I make Amanda watch YouTube videos of stuff that we're researching for that week. And I'm like, hey, watch this with me. It's only 45 minutes long. We need to watch this documentary on this thing that we're doing. But it's cool because
it's a bonding thing.
Yeah, we look, Adam and I look at things a little bit differently, and we research a little bit differently. Because I drive all day, I have an opportunity to watch videos and documentaries and things like that, where I can just plug it in and listen to the audio. And Adam digs down into the reading and stuff. Plus, he's kind of a history buff. He really digs into that minutia of, what's the history behind this building? When was it built? What happened there? And I'm constantly looking for somebody that has a personal story about something that happened when they visited this location, or this particular thing happened to them. Like, when we did the episode on time travel, that show was almost entirely personal accounts. Mm-hmm. That's why it's one of my favorites, because that's what I want to read. I want to hear people tell me about what happened to them. But when we do places like Chillingham Castle, Adam's got info on like how thick the bricks, the stones were where they made the wall. But when you bring it all together, it really works. So,
we like to say, instead of the Cliff Notes version, it's the Graveyard Notes version of things. Cause I'm ADD as all get out. And so I get bored easy. So I know if I'm getting bored with our information, our research, then, we need to move to the next topic, the next point.
Yeah.
So it I guess that kind of helps format my end of the research, is like, okay, I got bored describing this, so I need to move over and do something else.
Yeah, Adam doesn't wait for me to look like I'm getting bored of hearing him talking. He gets bored himself.
Yeah. Story of my life.
we both can get a little long-winded and opinionated at times, and so we face one another while we're recording so that the other one can go, all right, let's move it along.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do that too. Dave looks across the table and, gives me some sort of hand signal that usually ends up in one in return.
The one finger signal on stopping. Yeah.
Yeah. It just kind of, helps the show move along without all the beeps.
Right.
How long have you guys been friends? Because that comes across in your podcast. I mean, it really shows, again, in the chemistry, that you guys have had to been friends for a long time.
About 5 years?
Maybe a little more than that.
Maybe a little longer than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's maybe been 6 or 7, I think.
Yeah.
Wow. I thought maybe you guys grew up together.
What I was thinking, is that you guys grew up together or something.
No, because Adam grew up in Texas and I grew up right here in Middle Tennessee. So we were grown ass men when we met. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It was one of those things that as soon as Matt and I met, it was like, okay, yep, we click. Similar interest, similar senses of humor, and where it differs, we play off of each other pretty well. So, yeah.
I told Amanda the other night, we're really just big nerds.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of stuff that we both grew up enjoying and watching, unsolved mysteries and shows like that.
Robert Stack.
Yeah. So we already had that in common, so the fact that we were already friends and, had some type of chemistry, and, we're both open enough that we're not shy about talking. So.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, I think kudos to you too. What you're doing helps, and what I really like about these shows and doing these type of podcasts is breaking that stigma. It's very frustrating for people who have had a paranormal experience, be it a contact with a Bigfoot, seeing something strange in the sky. It's hard for people because they don't want to talk about it, especially around work or friends, because they don't want to get laughed at. And that just bugs me so bad that our society is like that. And I think the more shows that are like yours, like Paranormal Road or Hillbilly Horror Stories, when you get shows out there that talk about this, I think the more we can break down some of that barriers where people can feel free, to share their experience without being laughed at or ridiculed. It's really a shame that happens.
Yeah, it drives me and Matt nuts that, we lose a lot of stories to the fact that people don't want to share them. There's gotta be so much more out there that we don't know about and that we will never know about because the experiencer has passed on, or, has just been ridiculed early in their life, so they're never going to tell it again. So Matt and I, when we set up the graveyard, we said Graveyard Tales is going to be a place that people feel comfortable talking about their experiences, no matter how weird or whatever they think that they may be or whatever. And then this goes for on the show and in the Facebook group and on Twitter. Our Facebook group is a place where we want everybody to feel comfortable sharing their personal stories, and, it's your safe place for whatever you want to share, in the frame of being kind to everybody else. There's some things that we, try to keep out of there. No religious bashing, nothing like that. There's no room for politics in the graveyard, so we keep that out. But, share everything else you want to share, and you're not going to get ridiculed. And that's one of the greatest things that we found about starting the show and the community is everybody in the community is just amazing. Yeah. I mean, they support not only Matt and I, but everybody else. And people get on there and share stories, and Matt and I don't even see it for days because we're, busy with research or work or both, and there's a whole, string of messages there of people supporting the other one and all that. And it's great to go back and read that stuff. And
yeah, I mean, I'll get to a post and I'll be like, oh, I'll comment on this. And I'll be like 39 comments. And I'll look and I'm like, Adam hadn't even posted in there. I mean, somebody and everybody just comes together. And it's great to see where somebody has something going on currently. It's not a, well, when I was a kid type story. It was, look, guys, for the last 3 nights, I've seen this shadow in my hallway, and my dog is freaked out, and it's freaking me out, and I'm not sure what to do. And then you can look at just post after post after post telling them, try this, do this, you should do this. Mm-hmm. Not one single thing is, anything negative, not one. Mm-hmm. And that it's just amazing. And honestly, if the show went away tomorrow, the group would live on.
Sure.
I mean, the community would keep going.
Where your show is helping. It's helping break those barriers down. It's bringing people together, and I think that's awesome.
You guys do a great job. I mean, did you ever think that your show would get as big as it is and take off like it is, as being as new at it as you are?
Nope.
Nope.
well, that was a very detailed response from Adam.
We did not. We figured our friends and family would listen to it, and maybe a few other people, but we had no idea.
Yeah, because we thought, it takes a special person to like our, brand of bovine scatology, but apparently there's a lot of fellow bovine lovers out there.
We're hoping that our families will share some of our episodes with people.
We can only hope.
Yeah, my parents don't even listen. And we've interviewed them on the show. Of course, they're like, oh, podcast. That's really great. What's a podcast?
Yeah.
We must be related. I think my family does the same thing.
You kind of touched on it as far as your personal favorite shows. Can you elaborate on, for each one of you, which ones they are?
Yeah, I mean, mine, they all kind of, that's like almost picking your favorite child, but I don't have a problem doing that because I do have favorites. The Missing 411 is one of my top favorites just because the whole thing grouped together that's still ongoing. Just, it still captures me. Even after we've done the research and put out the episode, I still find myself going back and researching and trying to find the next case that, maybe Matt and I can do a missing 411.2 or something, and that's just always captured me. And then the NDE OBE episode and the remote viewing and vampires, Wendigos, those are all some of my favorites. The obviously vampire and Wendigo, because it's a cryptid and a legend there, and I'm a big cryptid buff.
Yeah.
And cryptozoologist at heart, but never took that next step.
Yeah, Adam comes up with ideas, cryptids for shows that I've never heard of. And he's like, let's do this. I'm like, what is that? I've never heard of that.
There's one coming up in the near future that's that exact thing that Matt goes, what is that?
What are you talking about? I really enjoy the shows we've done on phenomena. Time travel, like I said, was one of my favorite ones. The remote viewing and the outer body experiences, another one was really, I enjoyed researching that and reading those stories. But from time to time, we'll pick on a topic that I'm thinking, okay, this is one that Adam wants to do. But then I'll get into it and I'll be like, man, this is really interesting. And one of our recent episodes was exactly that. We've had fairies and fae on our list for almost since the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And I've just been like, I wonder when he's going to hit me with this. So it'll come up and then we push it off, and it'll come up and we push it off. Yeah. So I'm finally, all right, we're going to do the fae. And man, I mean, it's funny. I don't go back and listen to our shows. And I'm like, well, I've already heard it.
Yeah,
but some of them
I
will.
After we hear it and we're editing and going back over it, it's like by the time it hits the air, it's like, okay.
Exactly.
I listen to it in my car. I listen to it over and over because I'm thinking, okay, that really sucked. How could we, we got to do better here.
Dave just constant rewind all the time.
Now there will be times where I'm like, I want to compare, how we sound now as opposed to 20 episodes ago.
Right.
That's
but
scary.
That one on Fae Folk, I went back and listened to the entire thing and enjoyed the hell out of it. Even though, I had all heard it before. And so every once in a while we get one that really surprises me how much I enjoy it and what I learn. And that, like I said, Adam comes up with stuff that I'm like, never heard of it, but let's rock on, brother. Let's do it.
Yeah, I'm one of those guys that my memory is weird. Like if you just ask me, what do I know? I can't tell you. But if you then hit me with something, it'll spark a memory in my brain, and then I'm able to start telling you about it. And I've got a back catalog of useless crap in here. There's so much useless stuff in my head. I forget how to tie my shoes some days, but it helps when you're talking about, show topics and stuff like that.
Yeah. My brain works like that a little. I told Amanda, I said, in my head is a bunch of filing cabinets, like a library. And I have little gnomes in my head that when I hear something and the gnome says, oh, and he runs down and pulls out the file thing and says, say this.
Pick up on those gnomes when we get back from break. We're coming up on break. So stay with us when we come back from break, and we're going to have some more graveyard tales for you.
Good evening, everybody, or morning or afternoon or whatever. It doesn't matter. We are Graveyard Tales. Now, if you like ghost stories, hauntings, cryptid encounters, and the weird history behind them, then you should join us in the graveyard.
You can find us on any of your favorite podcast providers. Check out our website at graveyardpodcast.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter at GRV. Just go search Graveyard Tales.
That would be easier. Now, we hope to see you in the graveyard.
And we're back
with Adam and Matt from Graveyard Tales. So, Matt, we talked about gnomes. So let's switch gears a little bit and let's start talking about Missing 411. That case was by far, I mean, they're all great shows, but that one just had me captivated because you guys were like on your mark with that. You just kept the listener like grossly in tune to that show. Your bullet points were phenomenal. So with Missing 411, I have to wonder, what else was involved with that?
Well, we got into looking at those cases, and the similarities to all of them is kind of what drew us to it. And then as we started researching it more and more, we kind of started developing theories of our own, which that happens sometimes in our research, but we try to leave our theories out of it for the most part, kind of let the listener make up their own mind. But it was hard on that one not to, because, there's so many cases of, like we were talking before, of Bigfoot's coming into the picture.
Yeah.
Right.
It could be, and I know, David, you had said that, in the middle part of the U.S., there's not as many missing 411 cases, and there's also not as many
Bigfoot sightings.
Sightings. So that kind of correlates there a little bit. And, Matt told one of the stories on that episode about somebody local to us who might have run into one.
Yeah. So, one of the witnesses that came forward, they actually didn't realize what they had seen until they got home. And they were hiking, picnicking in the park at the time of this child going missing. But one of the family members had looked up was looking up into the trees in a hill and saw what he thought was an adult with something thrown over his shoulder. And the dad in that family that witnessed this, he said it didn't look like an adult human. It was too big, and it was moving in such a way that it didn't look human. He thought it was an animal, but he couldn't, for the life of him, figure out what animal would be walking upright on two legs up there in the mountains. And so once he got home and he saw the news article about this child that had gone missing, he came back and he contacted the park rangers and the FBI and said, the time frame of this child going missing coincides with us seeing this. And I thought, you might need to know this information. What was also very interesting is where they saw this figure with something over its shoulder. It did coincide with the time, but he was at a distance that where this, if it was a person hiking, even without carrying anything, they would have had to have been moving at such a clip to cover that much distance. But a Bigfoot could have probably managed it without any difficulty and gotten that far away, because they were confident that a child on his own couldn't have gotten that far away that quickly, in those woods. So, I mean, it's one, and that's just one of many missing 411 cases that have Bigfoot connotations. And David Paulides doesn't really make any bones about it. I mean, he's really saying, this is what the facts say, and it, as strange as it may sound, this is where it points over and over and over again.
Yeah. It was just a couple of episodes ago, we interviewed, and this shocked me. I mean, we had two brothers that had an encounter here in Lorain County, and that's the county we live in. when I started doing some research, I was shocked at the number of reports. Now you gotta keep in mind, from this area, Lorain County is pretty heavily populated, and we're a suburb of Cleveland. Now there are rural areas of Lorain County, but these brothers on our show, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind, I believe them. I mean, their credentials, their background, there's something out there. And when I was listening to your 411 episode, I kept thinking this has got to be it's got to be related to Bigfoot or something. Because like you said, Matt, the coincidences, of some of these sightings and these reports, and they're very mysterious. I'm not saying all of them are, but it sure, to me, leans heavily that it's in that direction.
Yeah, it's just, there comes a time when you've got to look at, quote, coincidences and kind of change your mind about it.
Wait a minute, Adam. You got to say evidence for me.
Evidence?
There he goes. It's that Texas accent. Say it again.
The evidence.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Well,
every time you say evidence, it's like that accent just comes right out. And like nobody ever says evidence quite like Adam does.
Well, Ashley always tells me that the way I say "on" is very unique, and that's the one that I hear all the time too. It's like I've got to say "on." If we've got the evidence on that, then I guess that's my weird.
It's the double whammy.
Yeah, right.
I like the way he says boys.
Boys?
Well, I tell you again, over and over, the chemistry works so well for you. I have to ask you, though, do you or have you encountered any haters?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, a few. Not many.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's not many. We get here and there, we'll get some, but they're the typical internet trolls that really don't have anything specific that they say. We've gotten this show is boring. I don't like this format. And it's like, okay, then don't listen.
Yeah, I call them the basement dwellers.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
As our studio, we're sitting down in the basement.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So we are basement dwellers.
Right. But, I mean, I've done content creation before, and it's not near as bad in the podcast community as it is in other areas like YouTube or whatever. The podcast community is wonderful. They're supportive, and that's from listeners all the way to other shows and even the bigger shows that have been out there for years that, they don't have a problem supporting some of the up and coming shows. Like when we were first starting out, we were able to become friends with some of these bigger shows and, make the friendships that go a long way. And, that's amazing to us because, you're used to having the internet trolls and in every facet of the internet, but not as much in podcasting.
No, you don't see it a lot. You may see non-constructive criticism, or like Adam said, it's real vague. There's no specific and there's nothing that says, hey, this show would be better if. It's just a lot of.
Yeah, it's that. Hey, boy, your voice is stupid.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. I know that.
It's your evidence.
Yeah, I was going to say, where's the evidence?
Yeah. Show me the evidence, boy.
Early on, we would get direct messages on Twitter or Facebook about how we mispronounce something or may not have described something exactly right, especially if it's somewhere overseas. And sometimes it's pointed, but a lot of times it's good. I mean, we've got listeners all over Europe and Australia, and they'll tell us, it's really like this. This is how this place really looks.
Yeah.
You know,
and we appreciate that constructive help.
Right.
You know, because we're from the southern United States, and our vocabulary isn't that great. So we do our best, but
you know, I love feedback, and I'm with you there. Constructive criticism, that's great, but it really is annoying when you get the negative comments, but they don't say what they don't like about it.
Right.
I don't like it. And then you say, well, what don't you like? Well, I don't know. I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, that helps us a lot.
Okay, block.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, well, I can't make it any better for you if you don't tell me what you didn't like. You know, we're here to put on a show for you guys and for y'all to enjoy it. And if you don't, then tell me. And if it's something we can fix, you know, great. If it's my accent, sorry, you're SOL. That's been that way my whole life. So, you know, tell me what it is and maybe we can do something about it, you know?
It's like one of those bad Amazon reviews. Hate this product, returning it.
Yep.
Okay.
There was 12,000 people that liked it, but that one did it.
Well, that one will always stick in your craw a little bit too. So
It does. 'Cause, you know, people don't realize how much good we, you know, and I say the community of podcasters, how much you put your heart and soul into it. You know, you really, it's like a work of art. It's something you want to be proud of, you know? So if I feel if someone doesn't like something, then I failed in some way, you know, we failed in some way. Well, tell us, you know, how we can improve, and, you know, we'll do our best to do that. And if we can't, then find another podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then,
you know, you guys do a great job. We only hope we can do as well as you guys are doing.
Yeah, you guys do phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
Y'all are doing great, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I was, you know, I listened to you guys and I was kind of, I hate to say looking at numbers and stuff, but I was looking at numbers and y'all are doing a good job.
Yeah.
Well, creeping on our numbers, are you?
I'm not going to admit to that on air, but maybe.
Hey, we got to learn from each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I have to kind of, if I don't ask this question of Adam, I'm never going to hear the end of this. When I was talking about tonight's show and that we're going to be interviewing, one of our followers and your followers said, please, please, please find out why Adam is afraid of children's spirits. Adam, enlighten us why children creep you out.
It's children.
You know,
spirits or the living ones?
Yeah, a little of both. Now, I don't honestly have a great answer for you, but, you know, living human kids can be creepy and say some really creepy stuff that you don't know where they come up with it, you know, and that doesn't help when they, you know, are spirit children. But I think one of the biggest things for me is that if you dig deeper into that whole thing, it's like you just feel horrible that it's a child has died and its spirit has not moved on, and here it is, and I'm awkward around kids anyway, and you put a spectral kid in front of me and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And it just, you know, they can sneak up on you and poke you and you'll never see them. And it's I don't know. Yeah. There's just some inherent fear that's hard for me to describe when it comes to ghost kids. Matt and I can go out and do an investigation and run into all the, you know, angry men and women spirits that are out there. But if I hear a, hey, mister, I'm out. I'm done.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? When you come to Ohio, we're going to have to take you out to Gore Orphanage.
Oh gosh, I listened to that and I was just like, oh man, this place.
It is creepy beyond creepy beyond creepy. I mean, obviously, orphanage did not burn as far as kids burning down there. That didn't happen. And over the years, you know, hopefully our show kind of separated that, but there's been children's spirits seen down there. So it is creepy, and I could just see, see you now, Adam, if we went down there and they banged on the car and found handprints on the car.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I would be in the car under the seat.
We're like, where'd Adam
I
go?
can feel you on that whole thing, Adam, with the kids. When we were down there and did the show with you guys and the shop we were in.
Mm-hmm.
In that.
Yeah, being, for me, besides that it was cool and fun, being the medium, it was a little tougher on me because the minute I walked in the door, there were those pictures of children in caskets.
Yep.
And that just, the whole evening, it just kept tearing at me.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And so that, I can feel you with that. With the whole thing with kids is just sad as it is. There's something that people never want to have to deal with is the loss of a child.
Right. And it just, I think it brings that to the forefront of your mind, medium or not, when you experience something like that, that's what's brought to the forefront of your mind. And that's why it's kind of harder for me to take,
And
Right.
And I've always felt that when we're talking about children spirits, that the emotion that surrounds the death of a child just pours so much energy, into that event, that I think that's part of why we hear so many stories of, child ghosts.
Yeah.
There's so much emotion around that, whether you're talking about, Gore Orphanage or, the little girl that is around the operating room at the South Pittsburgh Hospital.
Mm-hmm. Or the Thomas House.
Or the Thomas House.
Sarah.
I mean, you hardly don't find it. I'm sure you guys see this a lot more than what Adam and I do. You don't really find a place that is given that moniker of a haunted whatever without there being a child spirit associated with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's, and I think, Matt, you may be onto something there as far as the energy around that just magnifies the actual haunting itself. Giving energy to it.
Yep. And if you multiply that on top of the child not knowing what's happening or where it's supposed to go or anything like that, then classic, kid ghost scenario there. It's, you're hitting on all cylinders at that point where you're bound to have, somebody stuck.
Mm-hmm. We don't ever, and God, if we ever start something like that, you guys, just call us up and give us a swift kick in the ass. But if we ever start acting pompous or that we know it all, because we don't, and we want to make certain that our listeners realize that we will never claim to be experts. And everything that investigation we do, there's so many things that we learn that just blows our mind. And one of those involving a child spirit was at the Lorraine Lighthouse. We were the only way to get to that lighthouse is by boat. So they took us out there and we spent the night out there. And we were shocked to find, and we had ICT communication from a child spirit. And it's like, what on earth would a child be doing out here, in the middle of the lake?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It just blows your mind. It's and again, I don't have the answers to, and when asked a question, Shelley asked, are the parents here? And the response was, no, they left. And it's like, okay, this is like bizarre that a child and parents per se would be out at a lighthouse in the middle of the lake. And again, it's that learning thing. I want to know answers. Okay, how the hell did that happen? How did a child get out there?
Yep.
And I find it wondrous, the whole topic of the paranormal. It's just, I think it gives me, and that's why I enjoy so much listening to your show, because your topics, make me realize there's something so much greater. We're all part of something that's pretty miraculous.
Yep. And then, that's one of the things I think that keeps Matt and I going is we we love to learn. And, you know, we have fun with the show, but we take the research seriously because we're into, you know, we get into it and then we're like, oh man, that's fascinating. And, you know, through the researching for the show and through doing the show, I've kind of expanded my outlook on things. I considered myself open when we started the show, but as we've done, you know, almost 60 episodes now, looking into all the different things, my purview has widened. And, you know, I've experienced more. I've, you know, come to realize that I don't know everything that I thought I did. And I always quote the great Neil deGrasse Tyson when he said, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. And I'm sure he would hit me for using it in this scenario because he doesn't believe in ghosts or anything like that. But the saying applies, because just because something doesn't make sense, just because this, you know, it doesn't make logical sense for there to be a shadow figure walking down my hallway. How does that fit with physics and nature and all that? Just because I don't think it fits doesn't mean that it doesn't.
Right.
You know, there's some law or something that our human brains do not understand that's going on here that allows this to happen, whether it be parallel dimensions, whether it be the whole, you know, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, so that matter has to stay around. Right. Something. We just don't understand it yet. And, you know, I'm seeing that more and more as we go. And, you know, when we first started this show, I did not believe in a lot of the, like, crystal protection stuff, but I do now. You know, I wear a black tourmaline necklace that I have on now. I've got one beside the bed.
Yep. And so do we.
Yep. And
it's funny that you said that, because that was exactly when we started EVP Mediums. I didn't really believe in crystals. I didn't believe in spirit guides. I mean, I don't know who this Alfred character is, but that's a subject for another day. But I mean, I didn't believe in any of that. And I'm so much more open to that now.
Our whole lives have changed from this. I mean, when we started doing all this, it was interesting and we had a real curiosity for it. But the more we do it and the more we find out, it's changed our life spiritually. And, you know, it's really broadened our knowledge of what can be out there and what's really going on that we can't see.
Yep. Yeah. I was having a lot of sleep paralysis issues that I talked about on the show and all that stuff. And, you know, I got that black tourmaline crystal by the bed, and I wear one now, you know, only comes off when I shower pretty much. And the sleep paralysis has stopped. I have not had one episode of sleep paralysis since that. And
that I went through that too.
Yeah,
and let's pick up on that. Unfortunately, I'm getting a signal that we have to come up on break.
All right.
So we're going to come back, and when we come back, we're going to continue this discussion, and we're going to talk about synchronicity.
If you're into the paranormal, the weird, the unexplained, tune into the new hit radio talk show on Odyssey Internet Radio, Paranormal Road. Every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m., Dave and Randy explore various paranormal topics with featured guests and audience stories. Have you had a paranormal experience? Crossed paths with the dogman? Experienced a haunting? Owned a haunted object? Or perhaps had a UFO encounter? If you have had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on Paranormal Road, please contact us. Send us an email outlining your experience and be sure to include your contact information. Our email contact information is podcast@evpmediums.com. Again, podcast@evpmediums.com.
And welcome back to Paranormal Road.
So Adam had his quote. I'm gonna tell you mine.
Okay, let's hear it.
So
I don't want to hear it. I'm shutting my mic off.
Well, mine is so campy because it comes from Men in Black. But I honestly think it's something that a lot of people watching that movie don't really pick up on. But it's where Tommy Lee Jones is talking to Will Smith, and Will Smith is trying to decide whether he's going to join him and do this. And he tells him, he says, yesterday you were convinced that we were alone in this universe. And today you know different. Just imagine what you'll know tomorrow. And it's just, it just, when we do this research and when we talk to people and when we read these accounts, you know, you really get your world shaken when you've thought something maybe your whole life and then you learn it's not that way. You know, I mean, it's almost like, you know, you can imagine when, you know, someone like Galileo figured out this is how this works. This is really how this works. And people have thought it was different for centuries, but we know this is how it works. I don't get irritated, but I do get frustrated with folks that can be so close-minded as to just say, no, it's this way. And I refuse to believe that it's any other way because, I mean, people did that for centuries and then they were proven wrong. And Adam and I have found things that have done that.
Drives me crazy when people say, you know, well, I've been in those woods all my life. I've never seen a Bigfoot. Or I've been to Gore Orphanage and I never heard kids scream. And that drives me crazy because just because you haven't doesn't mean somebody else. And again, the closed-mindedness. And on that, have you found, like we found that going into this field, strange things started happening? Like you run into people that coincidentally just will fit your next show, or you know you go into a store and all of a sudden you have a lead on a place to investigate. It's weird.
We've talked about it before, but it's like we'll be deep into research on something and I'll decide, okay, for the next hour and a half or so, I'm going to watch TV and I'm not going to think about the show. I need to clear my head. I need to whatever. And I'm skipping through the channels and holy crap, there's a show about what we're researching on. And I can't even take an hour and a half break from it because there it is, you know? And
he did that with the Kraken.
Yeah.
He messaged me and he goes, I'm just flipping channels and there's a show about the Kraken on. And that's exactly what we were researching at that time.
And it happens all the time. Like it's not just once that, oh, coincidence it happened. It's like we were talking earlier. You got to, at some point, you know, it's not a coincidence anymore. It, to me, you know, in talking about the way our outlooks have changed on everything doing this show, to me, that's what, if you want to say it's the universe, if you want to say it's God, if you want to say it's a higher power, whatever, that's the universe saying, hey, I think you're on the right path. Now look at this, check this out.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's exactly how we feel about it. We talk about how paths cross for a reason, you meet people for a reason, and it happens to us all the time too. We'll run into people that we find out we knew them from years ago, or we knew their family, and people will tell us stories about things that have happened to them that are, you know, tied into with one of our episodes. It happens all the time. You can't get away from it.
Yeah, and I take it as a good thing. I do.
Yeah, I do. I kind of think it's a reaffirmation, like you said, that you're on the right track. And I know this probably sounds corny, but it seems, the show Paranormal Road, which is, extremely in its infancy, but even EVP mediums, which we've done 70 video investigations now, quite a few years of doing this. It seems like not just in the paranormal end, but our lives have gotten better in all aspects. Luck is better luck. I mean, family things are better. Everything just seems to be more positive. And to me, I find that just amazing.
Yeah. And when you see more synchronicities, I think it's like we said, it's telling you you're on the right path with your life. And when you're on the right path with life, things are going to be better. I've noticed an improvement in just, I still get kicked in the butt by life, seems like all the time, but I think, as a whole, everything's getting better,
Yeah. I get stressed out very easily, and I'll get frustrated with something, especially with work, or if I'm working on something and it's just not right. And if I can take a step back, I mean, I've done this. This is a true story. I was working on something. This was years and years ago, and I could not make it work. And I knew that I could make this work, but nothing I tried was coming together. And I just finally said, okay, fine, I'm going to bed. And that night I dreamed how to make it work. And I got up, went in there, fixed it, and it worked exactly how it was in my dream. And I'm like, that is the strangest thing. And I've always thought I knew that I knew how to do it, but I couldn't bring it out. And it just took me going to another level of consciousness for my brain to go, okay, dummy, you've tried all these. This is how you do it. Here it is. And I think I'm with Adam. I think the universe does that to you. Yeah. If you open your mind, if you open up and you just look and listen.
And the more you do that, the more it shows you. And it's incredible.
I'll share this with y'all, and I haven't, Matt knows, but I haven't shared it on our show at all yet. So first exclusive here.
Awesome.
For like weeks, I was, for some reason, just out of nowhere, it would pop into my head that I needed to check out tarot, and it was like, at first I was like, yeah, I know what tarot is, and I just kind of brushed it aside, and it just kept happening. And I was like, okay, fine, give up, and I'm going to, do some research on it, look into it and all that. And so I bought a tarot deck, and I kid you not, every time I've done a reading for, after learning whatever, done a reading for somebody, it has come up spot on, like to where I don't even I'm not even interpreting the meaning of the cards to fit. It just frickin' fits. And I don't know why. But I told Ashley, I said, maybe there's a reason that the universe kept dropping these little bugs in my head. Hey, you need to check out tarot. Hey, you need to check out tarot. Maybe there's a reason. And, I know I'll get the people that go, well, Adam, you don't mess with the Ouija boards. Why are you messing with the tarot cards?
Hey, Adam, I have to confess, I was thinking the same thing.
Well, here's
He's
what...
got his tarot cards out right now. He knew you were going to ask that.
Yeah, exactly. I saw it in the cards. No, what I gathered in, meditating on it and thinking about it and researching it, to me, what a Ouija board is you're opening a door to something. You're unlocking that door and open it and saying, hey, come on in, let's talk. But what tarot is it's you're opening the blinds to something. There's still a barrier, They can't come to you, but they can point at stuff. They can communicate to you through a barrier. And all they're doing is kind of pushing these certain cards with certain meanings in your face and saying, hey, you know, pay attention to this, pay attention to that. And it's kind of more of a guide or a direction to follow rather than you opening your door to the neighborhood and saying, hey, you want to come in here and screw some shit up? Let's do it. You know?
Exactly. That's a good definition.
Yeah, it is. I always used to, you know, in our lectures when people, you know, ask about the Ouija board, the analogy I like to give is, if you take your phone and dial a random number, you don't know who the hell you're going to get that's going to answer on the other side. That's what the Ouija board is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's hit or miss. I mean,
open the door without looking through the peephole.
There you go.
Yep, exactly. And, you know, the tarot cards, it's more of just a roadmap. And, you know, it in doing tarot, when you're shuffling or handling the cards at all, every now and then one will just kind of fall out of the deck. And that's happened to me on several occasions now doing a reading or something. And that's the one that, you know, it's kind of the universe or the higher power flicking that card out and saying, hey, dummy, pay attention to this one.
You know, and again, I hate saying this because people that staunchly believe in spirit guides and that, you know, might upset them. And I don't mean that in any way, shape, or form. But I used to, long before paranormal investigations, in my prior professional life, when people would mention their spirit guides, I was one of those people that would laugh with my inside voice, and I would think, tree hugger, you know, I would go, okay, they're strange.
Hey, I'm with you, David. I was the same way.
Yeah. I was like, I didn't get into this. I don't believe in this stuff. But now it is completely different. I don't know if guide is even the right term for them. I don't know what they are. But I'm open to, you know, trying to understand who and what these positive spirits that are certainly influencing us in positive ways. And I wonder if the tarot isn't, Adam, like you're connecting to a higher self, or maybe you're connecting to one or more of your guides.
And that's very possible. You know, that's one of the things that they say about it is that it may not be a full, like you're connecting to the highest power in the universe, but you're connecting to somebody that has a higher vantage point than you do. And it may be that it wasn't the universe telling me to check out tarot. It could have been, if I have a spirit guide or, you know, one that hangs around me, that it was telling me, hey, I got stuff to tell you. This is the only way you're going to listen, you know, because we as a people, humans, are very thick-headed. And a lot of times we don't get things until it smacks us in the face and breaks our nose, you know.
And even then
we may say, stupid wall, why'd you put the stupid wall in front of me, you know? And we don't pay attention to why did I run into that wall, you know? And it that very well could be. It could be the only way that my thick head is going to listen to anything that's being told to me.
The universe is just, again, it's so strange. Like, you know, Randy, the very first video document that we did, and again, this was before EVP mediums was even really officially formed. You know, I owned a restaurant then, and Randy was the manager there, and I was doing a few investigations, and I said, you know, I really want to videotape these. And I asked Randy, I said, hey, I got this investigation on Sunday. Can you come along and videotape? He's like, sure. So all day he's acting weird. And so we get in the car, and we're heading towards Cleveland, where I, you know where this is, and I have it in my GPS, but it's not one of those that displays. It's on my phone, so he can't see it. But he's acting weird, and I'm like, what is going on with you? And he, you know, and he's, you're not going to believe this, but I know where we're going, and I'll let him pick it up from here. Because
thanks, Dave.
I think, yeah, I'll just throw it in his lap now. I got it going. But it seemed like, I don't think it's coincidence that his gift kicked into full steam, And it really, everybody that knew him at that point thought we're going to have him committed after that investigation. But
I guess it really was my eye-opening experience that
your
made me
shit moment.
Yeah, my oh shit moments where I realized then that a lot of the things that had happened to me throughout my life growing up really were signs to tell me that, hey, you have this gift, and I just ignored them all along. But this I couldn't ignore. That I knew exactly where we were going, what that house looked like. I described the house to David. We pull up. It was right where I said it was. We walked up, and I described what the inside of the house looked like before we walked in the door. And as soon as we walked in the house, it was like full on. The spirit that was in that house just was driving me crazy, and
it was like somebody flipped a switch.
It was crazy for me. I was a nervous wreck the whole day, and then I couldn't sleep for weeks after that.
I can only imagine. Wow.
And that just like started the whole thing. So I went through those periods of not being able to sleep and everything else like you were talking about earlier.
So Adam, the tarot could be your oh shit moment.
I found myself saying that exact phrase several times. I did a reading for a buddy of mine actually this afternoon, and it was one of those things that I've known him for years and years, and did a reading for him. And as soon as I'm still learning all the meanings of the cards, so I have a little cheat sheet for what each card means. And I started looking through them, and I really did. It was like, oh shit, that works. Because it was exactly for him. Like that couldn't have fit anybody else. And there's 72 cards in that deck. And the 3 that I got for him, I just do the simple spread right now. The 3 that I got for him, it fit him perfectly, and it answered the exact questions that we were talking about. It was just, I don't know how, why, or anything, but it that very well could be the OSM.
I have those on just about every investigation, especially when you go in and you start spouting off all kinds of weird crap to people, and they look at you like you got 3 heads.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you find out that what you're talking about is true or happening. That's when it's, the oh shit moment. And then I need wine to calm me down.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I've been there. I mean, mine came early on. When I was, and it was one of those things where I until later, when I became a few years older, I never really thought about it. It was just one of those weird coincidences. But when I was 14, I had an uncle that he actually lived with us for a period of time. He was pretty much an invalid, and my parents helped take care of him for several years. And he lived with us. He had emphysema, and later in life, he had to be in a nursing home. He just required too much care. And I didn't see him that often then, but it was the night before Easter, and I dreamed that he came walking up the sidewalk, and I was standing on the front porch, and he was wearing white, and he walked up, which was strange because he hadn't walked in years. Walked up, and he just looked up, and he said, "Matt, I just wanted to come by and tell you thank you, and thank you, your mom and dad for doing so much for me, and to tell y'all goodbye." Wow. And it was just, and you wake up from a dream like that, and you're like, well, that was really weird. That was a weird dream. And I get up, and I'm stirring around the house, and my mom comes in, and she's like, "The nursing home called, and your uncle passed away, early this morning." And you're just standing there like, how strange is this? Yeah. I mean, what? You begin to think what, and I remember being that age and going, what a weird coincidence. And as I got older and I learned more, I'm like, that was not a coincidence, you know?
Right. These things are happening for reasons.
Right. And, you know, I was 17 when, you know, a friend of mine's father who was a medium, you know, he told me, he said, I can sense that you're sensitive to this. And if you decided that you wanted to pursue this, he said, I firmly believe that you could. And I never really did, but it just fueled the fire that I already had for looking into and reading about, you know, things that were, I guess you'd call paranormal, but, you know, the unexplained, you know, the strange and bizarre, you know, that just, it just kept my interest piqued at that point. I mean, and at 17 years old, it's frightening.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when you've got an adult, not only just an adult you trust. You know, I grew up with his son. I mean, I'd known this man, you know, my whole life at that point. And for him to tell me, I'm not trying to scare you, but, you know, there's a good chance that you may experience these things, that things may try to communicate to you. And he said, I just feel like you need to know. And, you know, he was right. And, you know, sometimes I pass it off, and sometimes I pay closer attention, or at least I try. And, you know, I've had numerous experiences, I think, because my eyes are a little bit more open because of that.
Right.
And with that, we're coming up on our final segment, and we have to take a short break. But when we return, I want to talk a little bit about your personal hauntings, because I know you grew up in a haunted house. And I think our listeners would like to hear about that. And we'll talk about that when we return.
If you have an experience you would like to share with our audience, whether it be Bigfoot, the strange lights in the sky, or something small and gray in your backyard, you can email us at podcast@evpmediums.com. Be sure to include your contact information.
And welcome back to Paranormal Road. And Matt, talking about the dream you had, I want to share this dream that I had with you and our listeners, because I believe what you had was a message from the other side. There's no doubt in my mind. Years ago, my wife and I, we had 2 daughters. We were done having kids. You know, never thought of any more children. It was just not in our plans. But quite a few years later, our girls were already at that point, you know, 7 and 9 years old. We go to bed one night, and I wake. I had this dream, and in this dream, my dad, who died when I was 10, he pulls up to the front of my house in this beautiful red convertible car, and I'm mowing the lawn, and I shut off the lawnmower, and I see him and rage. I'm enraged. Now, out of my peripheral vision, I see a small child in the back seat, but I never look at this child directly. I knew it was a boy, but I'm still pissed. I am so mad in my dream that I walk over to the car, and I'm like, you SOB, you've been alive all these years? And I'm like, and he opens the door, and the look of love, and he looked fantastic. I mean, just the radiance from him. And he just smiled, never said a word, and I'm yelling and screaming at him. I mean, how could you have done this to, you know, us? And he says, son, get in. You know, so I get in the car, and I'm still mad. I'm hitting the dashboard. I'm like, how could you have done this? Because I'm so mad. And he takes his hand, he puts it on mine, and he says, son. And it's, you know, and I'm so mad, huffing and puffing, and he looks me in the eye and said, today I bring you the greatest gift. And I woke up. And when I woke up, my wife, my ex-wife will hate me for telling this, but she's snoring, and she only did that when she was pregnant, and she was laying on her back, and when she was pregnant with the girls, drove me nuts those 9 months, because she would lay on her back and she would prop her leg up, and gravity would start pulling it, and then she would in her sleep jerk the bed. So I would have to reach over with my hand and push her knee down so she'd stop jerking the bed. But she only did that when she was pregnant. And right then I knew, when I woke up, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have a son. And I didn't say anything to her in the morning. Didn't say anything at all. That evening, I would get home before her, and she would usually pick up the girls from the sitters, and she came home, and I was like, where are the girls? And she said, Diane's going to bring them over, who was my sister-in-law, and she had flowers behind her back, and she pulls them out, and she looks at me, and she says, I have something to tell you. And I said, we're going to have a boy. And she was just in shock. And then I told her the dream. And she said, well, honey, it's too soon for that. She said, you know, that we haven't even, you know, that we can't do an ultrasound soon. I said, trust me, we're going to have a boy. And sure enough, and I said, I want to name him Charles after my dad. So that's when my son Charles was born.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So I'm absolutely convinced, you know, Matt, you had a visit from the other side, and I think it's incredible and it's beautiful.
Yeah, we tell a lot of our listeners who have brought us stories like that, you know, we really believe that your loved ones can reach out to you, you know, in a dream or a dream state, because you're more open. You know, you don't have the normal cognitive blocks that you would have when you're awake. And so they choose to come to you then because it's just easier for you to accept. And where are you going to go? Your ass is asleep. You're not going to get up. And,
yeah, right.
Sleep.
Yep.
So we are vulnerable when we're sleeping.
But let's get into some of your paranormal stories. Matt, I know you've had one, and I'd like you to share that. Adam, have you had one?
Not so much when I was younger, but here lately in the past 3 or 4 years I have living at this house. There's somebody that roommates with me. I call him my roommate, you know.
Oh, how's Dallas feel about that?
He's not that happy, but he'll kind of stare, and, you know, sometimes the hair will go up on the back of his neck. But for the most part, I think he and Dallas get along. He probably keeps Dallas company while I'm at work. So,
Matt, why don't you tell us about we talked about this when we were in Nashville, and I found it fascinating.
Yeah, you know, I've had so many that, you know, it's almost become a tradition that around Halloween, you know, I'll have friends. We'll get together and we'll have friends that'll go, all right, Matt, you got to tell your stories. You got to tell your stories. And inevitably there'll be people there that haven't heard them, and they'll go, oh, what? Matt's got some ghost stories. And be like, you have no idea what he's got. But you know, the one that I don't share as often, is really the one that probably shook me the most, because it was so personal, you know, where it almost felt like almost invasive. You know, things moving and noises and footsteps and lights coming on and off. You know, that I grew up that way. I mean, that's the way our house was. I mean, we just accepted it from the minute my parents moved in. That's how it was. And we share a lot of those stories on our last Halloween episode where we interview mom and dad. But from about the age of 15 to 18, that's where the experimentation came in. And those are the years where, you know, the Ouija board was a common thing. And then we got into doing seances. And like I said, one of my best friend's fathers was a medium. In fact, he had been a medium for so long and was so well known that he had shared a story with us that when his oldest son, who was 2 years older than me, was very, very young. In fact, I'm not even sure that my friend was even born yet. A group had actually approached him offering to pay him $10,000 to perform a black mass. And so he's telling us these kind of stories as young teenagers, and we're enthralled and scared out of our minds at the same time. But we started doing this stuff, and then we started doing some things with him. And I think, you know, knowing him, he thought this will be a fun way to scare these guys. You know, we're going to scare the pants off of these kids. And it went a different way. So one night we decided that we were going to have a seance, and there were about maybe 8 or 9 of us there. And we're in a room at my friend's house, and we're sitting around, and there's a candle, and it's the only light in the room, and everybody's holding hands. And I can remember, you know, hearing him talk and the things he was saying. And he's doing the normal stuff. You know, if there's anyone here that wants to communicate with us, we're open, and you know, the same old movie lines that you've heard 1,000 times. But then it shifted, and he began to say, you know, things like, Spirit, no, you know, speak through me. I can be your voice. You know, if you wish to communicate, speak through me. And then he began to be a little more forceful, saying things like, no, Spirit, I know he's strong, but, you know, he's young. You know, you go through me. If you want to communicate, go through me, not him. And about that time, you know, is where my memory begins to lapse. And what I know of the story was what I was told by the people that were there. So what happened, I began to look and just focus on the candle, and the candle became dark where I could no longer see the light. It was the only light in the room. And during that time, the friend that was sitting next to me that was holding my hand, who I actually ran into just the other night, he said he was holding my hand, and my hand became ice cold. And he said it began to freak him out a little bit. And the people that were on the other side said, of course, this candle is in the middle of a circle of people, but the only shadow in the room was behind me. And he said it just kept growing and growing and growing. And he said when it got so big, one of the girls that was there screamed, and everybody let go, and all of a sudden I could see again. And I had no idea that this was going on until after the fact, and they were telling me about this. And this is what started the whole, you know, process of my friend's father telling me, I think if you really wanted to dig into this, you could. You know, you're sensitive to this, and, you know, spirits feel like they can communicate to you or through you. And he said, if you open up a little bit, you're going to experience some things. I lived in a house here in Hendersonville. I don't live there anymore, but I lived in that house for about 7 years. And strange things would happen. And so I began to think that maybe they followed me. And it wasn't the house that I grew up in, it was me. But the things that happened at my parents' house still happen without me there. But from where I would when I would go to bed, I would watch television, and I could see a shadow come down the hall, and it looked like, you know, a tall figure wearing a coat, almost similar to what people call the Hat Man. You know, I would see him come down the hall, and it looked like he would go straight to the bedroom at the end of the hall where my daughter was. And I you know, at the time, you know, I was in my early 30s, you know, late 20s, and I didn't know anything about the Hat Man. You know, but I just thought, you know, these are the things that I see. But there was another one, and it was a little girl. And when I would see the little girl, she was wearing like an old style dress, and it was yellow, you know, like a you know what I'm talking about, the frilly dress, the big, and I would see her from time to time, and it was always in the hallway of this house, never anywhere else, always in the hallway. And it would always be one of those situations where if I looked directly at her, she was gone, but I would see her. And so when I would notice her, I would try my best not to look directly at her because I didn't want her to go away. I wanted to see her, and she would just kind of stand there and smile, and she was wearing a yellow dress. And sometimes she would walk back and forth down the hall. Well, my ex that I was living with, I finally one night I just looked at her and I said, I'm not trying to scare you. And she knew all the stories. She had heard them 1,000 times. And I said, but every so often I see something in the hallway, and her face just went white. She was like, yeah. And I said, do you ever see anything down the hallway? And she's just nodding her head like, oh my God, here we go. And then I said,
OSM.
Yeah. I said, you ever see a little girl? And she was like, oh God, yes. And I said, what's she wearing? And she's like, a dress. And I said, yes. And I'm like, what color is it? And she goes, yellow. And I'm like, yes, yes. I was like, somebody else has seen it. And it was one of those moments. I was like, I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. And somebody else would experience. So I knew at that point, it's not just me. It's not just me that I'm seeing something that's really there. And
those are amazing, validating moments.
Oh yeah. I mean, that moment right there was what just absolutely convinced me. This is not in your head. You have not convinced yourself of this. You have not let other people's stories shade your judgment. This is legit.
That's how I knew there was something legitimate in my house, was when Ashley saw it too.
Right.
Ashley saw the same thing, and she's hearing the same stuff I'm hearing, and I won't react to it, because I'm so used to it, but now she'll react to it and look at me, and I'm like, yep, I heard that too. Yep. I'm like, yeah, that's Jack. He's in there fiddling with the dishes. So.
Wait, that's pretty good if you got a ghost that's doing the dishes.
I wish. He's just screwing them up.
But that validation feels amazing.
Yeah, some of our investigations, and again, I still have to, ask myself, did this really happen? I mean, it's like we look at each other and you just, again, you want to, pinch yourself. Okay, did this happen? But, so many of them, but we do what we call validation questions. And there was this one investigation where our client was a real big fan of John Wayne and Westerns. And in his bedroom, he had a picture of John Wayne. And we're doing ITC and we're walking around. And I said, can somebody tell me who this is? Give me his real name. And over the ghost box, I mean, clear as day. I mean, there was no this is not one of those, well, it could have. It was crystal clear. It's the Duke. Now, anybody who knows John Wayne, he went by the Duke. And it's like, wow. And again, it's those validation moments that are just so mind-blowing. To me, it's like throwing coal on my fire, throwing in wood, and fueling it up more. It's those things that just keep me going. It's amazing. And I think you can choose to, you fear it or you embrace it, and I choose the latter, because when you embrace it, then and you don't allow fear to take over, then I think that's when you really truly see things.
Yep. That's what Matt and I have been especially doing the last few years, and more so with the show, is you just get to where, the paranormal becomes normal to you. Yeah. So you just, you accept it and you're like, okay, yep. I believe that there's another plane of existence that we interact with sometimes, and they've chosen this moment to, shut my door in my hallway to let me know it's here, or, to walk across the hallway and say hi and block out the light for a little bit. That's how it communicates. So, you know, hey, how's it going? And, you know, you just kind of go on with it, you know. Not saying we don't get freaked out about stuff, because we do.
Yeah.
You know,
I get cold chills telling that story every time.
Yep. And there's the hair-raising stuff. And I think if you ever lose that, you've completely gone crazy. If you lose those things that scare you.
Return.
Right. And, you know, it's the stuff that lets you know when you get scared that you're not just imagining it. You know, it hasn't become just a thing in your head, because your body's still reacting to fear.
I think Adam and I, we look at so many things, and we have listeners tell us so many stories that even the stuff we research, we may not necessarily believe it, but we certainly don't not believe it. So I think there's a difference. You know, you may not necessarily think, well, I don't know if I really buy into this, but I'm not going to close off and say that I don't believe in it.
Healthy skepticism.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's we're the same way. I mean, there are some stories, and you know, that people have told us, and again, it's that okay type of voice in your head. You know, you're thinking, okay, this is a little bit way out there, but then again, how many people have said that I have shared the Hatman story with? You know, or talked about the experience at Gore Orphanage. You know, I mean, again, what's weird to me, you know, or what may seem weird, who am I to judge? You know, I like to take that approach. It's not, like you said, it's not necessarily that I believe it, but I believe they believe something happened to them. You know, and if they seem sincere, and I mean, I have a good read on people, and I'm sure you both are the same way. You know when you're being BS'd.
Sure.
But our professional and kind voices, still, you listen to it and smile, and you know, okay, but there are the genuine stories, and there's so many of them, that shows like yours, you know, the Graveyard Tales, I think those people who are suffering because they kept it inside for so long, you know, to land on your show and to hear your humor and your good-naturedness about both of you, your lightheartedness, but yet your seriousness on the subject. I think you guys are just doing such an incredible, great service. And unfortunately, we are running out of time. So I'd like for you to tell us, you know, the listeners, what's on the burner for Graveyard Tales? What's the future hold?
We've got an episode list that is too long to really name off here, because every day, you know, we get new episode topics from listeners. They'll say, hey, you need to do this, or you know, we'll just run across something. If I'm reading a book and I pass over something, I'm like, hey, I'm putting that in the list, you know. But we're looking at doing more interviews on the show, because we've got a new interface that will allow us to do that. We're looking at can't say too much, but a partnership with a radio app that is going to be streaming our show like a radio show. So it'll be another outlet for us, and details to come when all that's verified. But other than that, you know, you find us where you find all podcasts, any podcatcher, Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, any of that.
Podbean.
Yep. You can find us on any podcast outlet. We made sure to go out there and hit all those up so you can find us anywhere. And we're on Facebook, search Graveyard Tales. We're on Twitter, Graveyard Tales. I think it's GRVEYRD Tales because of all the character limit.
Limited characters, yeah.
And then on Instagram as well, you can find us.
Yeah, and we do have a website, graveyardpodcast.com, and we push that at the end of every show, because we do have merchandise with our logo.
You got great merchandise on that site.
We've got some pretty cool stuff. The
you do.
The baby onesies. You know, I love that. I'm like,
I'm sure Adam really liked having those, you know, children clothes on there. And
oh yeah, that's just fantastic.
It was an owl.
Yeah, yeah. It was an owl floating on swamp gas with flares.
Well, guys, I can't tell you how fantastic it's been to have you as a guest on our show.
It was great talking with you guys again. You know, we could go on for hours.
Yeah, we loved it. We've been looking forward to doing this, and we're going to have to get you guys on Graveyard Tales.
That's right.
Thanks so much for being on the show. And listeners, we highly encourage you to check out Graveyard Tales. It's just phenomenal. Again, Matt and Adam, thanks so much for being on the show.
And until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.
And on behalf of Randy and I, thanks for listening to Paranormal Road.